Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this Monday night to talk about North Bay transportation issues. It is great to be with you. I am Congressman Jared Huffman, and I'll just get this out of the way. Yes, I am left-handed tonight because I have a shoulder injury. I'm a 50-year-old trying to be a 25-year-old. It's not a good story, but that's why I'm in a sling, and I'll be just fine. But now you know. All right. Well, I want to apologize to any of you who had to brave the horrific traffic on Highway 101 to come to this summit on transportation issues, but at least you got a chance to live and feel the problem that we're here to talk about. And no, this is not our region somehow upsetting Governor Chris Christie. This is the situation that we've been dealing with for some time on Highway 101, and that the experts tell us we may be dealing with for a few more years to come. But the reason I wanted to have this summit and this conversation tonight is when I hear projections that tell us that we won't get any traffic relief until 2020, I cringe, and I know you do too, because I drive in that stuff, my family, everybody I know, all of you, all the people I represent, and I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to move these improvements along and make sure we keep them on track. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And I want to introduce the elected officials that are here to join me. This is a regional problem that affects the whole North Bay, but no one is affected more than the city of Petaluma. So I think it's appropriate that I have Mayor Glass to my right and Supervisor David Rabbit to my left. They'll be here with me on the dais tonight, and they may have some questions that are important to them. I would expect that. We're joined by some other elected officials tonight. Supervisor Steve Kinsey, who will be one of our panelists from Marin County and serving on the MTC. Jake McKenzie as well from Rohnert Park. Alice Fredericks, councilwoman from Tiburon, is here in the audience, I believe. And Deb Fudge, councilwoman from Windsor, and SMART director is here as well. And I see Councilman Mike Healy here in the front row as well. And who else did I see? Mike Harris was here.
Right in front of you.
Councilman Mike Harris. Oh, of course, and Chris Albertson. So we have a great representation of the Petaluma City Council here tonight, as I would expect. So I mentioned my very personal interest in this subject, and I wanted to share with you some of the work that I'm doing on transportation issues a little bit as we go along. We will get updates tonight on the Sonoma-Marin Narrows improvements, as well as the public transit piece of this that we hope will bring some relief, the SMART project in particular. It is an opportunity for all of us to hear from the agencies themselves that are working on these issues about what is happening to improve our commutes, how long it'll take, and of course I'm going to be listening for what I can do as your congressional representative to try to keep things on track and make them better. The format will be a series of short presentations by our panelists, and then we'll spend some time answering questions from our guests. And we have decided that the way we're going to do the public comment, the questions, I hope it's not comments and it's more questions from the public, is we will just have a microphone circulated by my staff, and we'll ask you to pose your question to the panel, and some of us may chime in as well. Before we get started, I want to thank everybody that has responded to the survey that I did a couple of days ago in advance of tonight's event. You may not see a lot of surprises in this survey, but you may have seen the email that looks something like this on the screen. And I want to just go ahead and go through the PowerPoint slides so you can see the results. We had, what, about 1,200 responses, Jenny?
113 so far.
Okay, so not a bad sample. And that is a little too small for some of you to read, so I will just tell you that these are, the question here is what specific improvement or repair should be the main transportation priority for Marin and Sonoma counties. And it looks like the largest share goes to three different things. The SMART projects, 27%, highway maintenance and improvements, 22%, and public transportation, 24%. And then there in the green, you have roadway maintenance and improvements, and a smaller piece of the pie up to the left, the upper left, is bicycling and walking. So there's that slide. Let's go to the next one. This is how do you generally commute to work. Overwhelmingly, 69% of people drive. The smaller pieces, you have the largest is the bus at 7%. 5% bike, that's not too shabby. We can keep working on improving that. Walking 4%, other 6%. The ferry is 4%. Next slide. How long is your average one-way commute? And the biggest piece of that is 20 to 30 minutes, 33%. Slightly longer commute for 24%. 24% of you have 40 to 60 minute commute. And 23% have 10 minutes or less, and we're all very jealous. 14% actually have even worse, more than an hour, 14%. And the next slide is how often do you find yourself driving in heavy traffic? The large green piece of that pie is 29%, a few times per week. To the right, the red piece is every workday, and that's 15%. And to the left, the purple piece is 14% is once per week. 19% top right, every day. Are there any more slides? How often do you ride the bus? Unfortunately, the large piece of that pie is less than once per month, 79%. And finally, how would you rate your options for commuting in the North Bay? It looks like, believe it or not, 28% are satisfied. Can you believe that? 28% are satisfied. Yeah, it's the 10-minute commute people. 46% say it's unsatisfactory, and 11% say terrible. 10% say great. How about that? Yeah. All right. I think that's the last slide. So that was an interesting survey and survey results. I want to, again, keep the focus tonight as much as we can on two things. One, the 101 Narrows and improving that, and then the second, the public transit relief that we hope that will be coming online to help with that congestion. And over the years, I've enjoyed being able to work with the communities I represent on these things. When I was in the Assembly, I co-chaired the SMART campaign, working with many of you here in this room. We worked hard as that project went forward to support funding and permitting. I continue to do that in Congress, troubleshooting on various fronts to keep things on track. And Farhad is on our speed dial, and we are on his. And so we really are committed to trying to make sure that this project gets over the finish line. I would say the same thing about the 101 Narrows improvement. When I was in the Assembly, I had the chance, as all of the crews were mobilized and work was about to begin, there was a last-minute permitting issue that came up, and my staff and I were able to do some emergency troubleshooting to keep that on track. And of course, we're always supporting the federal piece of funding that is so important to that project, and I'm going to continue doing everything I can on both of those fronts. But right now, I think the most pressing thing that I need to do as your congressman is to keep things from getting worse. And the reason for that is the Highway Trust Fund, which is the federal funding that is so significant. I'll give you some specific numbers in a moment, is about to start running out of money at the end of this summer. And at the end of September, MAP 21, which is the technical term for the Federal Transportation Authorization, expires, and if Congress doesn't act to reauthorize it, there's more trouble ahead for transportation projects. What happens at that point is federal agencies start delaying reimbursements to states and local transportation agencies. Projects start to grind to a halt. And that's independent, that authorization piece is independent of the fact that we just don't have enough money. We don't have enough money, of course, because the gas tax hasn't been increased since 1993. It is inadequate. There's a structural deficit in our transportation funding, and it seems like every year Congress is called upon in some sort of a last-minute stopgap situation to come up with funds from somewhere to make sure that we keep our transportation projects funded. California gets about $4 billion a year from the Highway Trust Fund. So it's a significant amount of money. The Bay Area relies on it to the tune of about $300 million a year. And the situation is serious enough that some states have actually already halted new projects because they are worried enough about the reauthorization and the funding shortfall. California has not done that. They are assuming that Congress, as it has so many times in the past, will piece something together at the last minute. I hope they're right about that. I'm going to try to do better than a last-minute stopgap. There are a number of longer-term and bigger fixes that are being proposed. You may have heard about President Obama's proposal. It is a $302 billion four-year surface transportation bill. It has a wide range of proposals that would actually increase transportation investments over this period. It includes a one-time transition payment from some corporate tax reform involving corporations that are working overseas and an attempt to repatriate some of their income to this country. But that would be kind of a one-time thing. He has not proposed a long-term fix to that structural deficit in the Highway Trust Fund. I mentioned that the gas tax is not enough these days to meet our transportation needs. We have about $50 billion every year in need in the transportation funding bill, and we have about $34 billion coming in from that gas tax, which is 18.4 cents per gallon. So the estimates are that to fully fund the transportation need, we would need to almost double the gas tax. So we'd need to take it up to about 33 cents per gallon, and that has its own political challenges. There is a bipartisan proposal in the Senate by Senator Murphy from Connecticut, who, by the way, is the catcher for the Democrats in the congressional baseball game. You didn't know that?
No.
He's a very good athlete. And Senator Corker from Tennessee. Their proposal has been endorsed by AAA and other road advocates. It would increase the gas tax by 6 cents in each of the next 2 years. So sort of a phase-in of a gas tax raise to try to address the problem, and then it would index it to inflation. So that's one proposal. But there's others as well. Senator Reid and Senator Rand Paul, kind of an odd bedfellows coalition there, have an idea to use the windfall of taxes on repatriated corporate profits, not unlike the president's idea, but more of a longer-term solution to try to address our deficit in transportation funding. Speaker Boehner and the House Republicans have put their own proposal together. It would not fully fund the transportation need, but it would be a temporary extension of the fund, and it would pay for it by eliminating Saturday Postal Service delivery, which I think is a bad idea. But again, another idea that's out there. Senator Wyden from Oregon has his own proposal that would temporarily extend the Highway Trust Fund by reducing tax fraud and kind of cracking down on waste and abuse. And another proposal is one that I just signed on to last week as a original co-sponsor that would basically close some loopholes that allow corporations to deduct the cost of moving out of the country and then declaring a foreign headquarters, which is a real problem that you may have been reading about. There's a large pharmaceutical transaction going on right now where an American pharmaceutical company is attempting to do just that. And by closing that loophole, we'd bring some tax revenues to the table that could provide a multi-year fix. So lots and lots of ideas, and I hope that one of these longer-term proposals to address the structural problem has a chance of moving forward this year, but there's probably an equal likelihood that it's a chewing gum and duct tape stopgap solution. One way or the other, though, we got to make sure that federal funding continues and that authorization gets extended. So with that, we're ready to move on to the panel and to our discussion tonight. Before we do that, I just want to invite the Petaluma Mayor and Supervisor to say any opening remarks that they may have, and then we'll introduce our first panel.
Thank you. We want to thank all of the folks that did find their way here today. I don't know if you're just looking for a cool spot in town with the heat, but congratulations on navigating the traffic and finding your way here. We know traffic is the issue in Petaluma. We're aware of that. This is an opportunity for the regional bodies and for the congressmen to become more familiar with the challenges that we would face. I would say that number one for Petaluma, the big concern is that we get Petaluma widened because our local transportation crosstown connectors are dependent upon the timing of the freeways being lifted and widened. That'll enable the opportunity, should we find the funding, to do a crosstown connector of this community that's actually been promised since 1961. For people here in this community, and throughout the county that voted to tax themselves with Measure M, I congratulate the public. That's why we were able to move forward on the transportation improvements on the 101 corridor. It may involve more sacrifice on your part, but we're going to be looking for solutions here tonight and going forward. Thank you, Congressman, for being here.
Thank you very much. I do want to say thank you to the Congressman for convening this meeting today. I really do appreciate it. Very timely, obviously, with all the work and worries in transportation in the Petaluma area. You know, I happen to be chair of the Board of Supervisors dealing with our local road issues, and we're trying to move forward on solving some of those. We have an awful lot of roads here in Sonoma County, not just the 101, that are in need of attention as well. I'm the vice chair of the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Suzanne Smith and many colleagues here today, certainly dealing with the 101 issues and the short, the gap of funding that needs to take place and through the narrows going forward. Also proud to be director of SMART, an alternative coming online here in the near future that will really end up being a, hopefully, as they say at the bridge, another lane for the 101 corridor with another way to commute. And I'm also a director of the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, which gives me a little insight into some of the further transportation issues, the buses and the ferries and whatnot. And as an architect, I love infrastructure, and I think that it's our moral imperative really to make sure that every generation does their part to make sure that the infrastructure that we leave the next generation is where it should be. And it only takes a generation, I think, to ignore that fact, and before you know it, you have deferred maintenance, which is awfully expensive, and it seems like it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So I'm really happy that you're here tonight, Congressman, and thank you so much for having this opportunity to speak about this important issue.
Well, thank you both. We'll go right to our first panel, and we've got a terrific lineup of folks from Caltrans, Bijan Sartipi, who was a little late because he was, gosh, imagine this, stuck in traffic. And formerly of Caltrans, Will Kempton, who's now with Transportation California, and frankly, when he was the director of Caltrans, did one of the most terrific turnaround jobs on an agency that had really lost some public confidence, and he did wonderful work to restore it. Suzanne Smith, the executive director of Sonoma County Transportation Agency, her counterpart in Marin County, Diane Steinhauser, Jake McKenzie and Steve Kinsey, both representatives on MTC as well as local officials, and we will kick it off, I believe, with Will Kempton.
Okay, thank you. I think this group is small enough to hear me. Can anybody not hear me? Do I need to use the microphone?
Use the microphone, please.
You would like me to do that? All right. I'm going to move out of the way because I want everybody on this side of the room to be able to see the slides that we're dealing with. Can I ask you, Susan? No, I'll just stand back here. And somebody was going to be operating the computer to advance the slides, so I'll just ask you to move the slides forward. Well, let me, and thanks very much for that introduction, Congressman. When I was Caltrans director, Jared Huffman was one of the people that I worked with very closely on a variety of issues. He was always interested and concerned about transportation. And when he invited me to come up from Sacramento to participate in this event, I couldn't turn it down. It's an opportunity to conduct a little bit more public outreach, to try to communicate what's really going on with transportation, but also in response to his request and knowing his interest in transportation. So I appreciate that. I would like to say to begin with that you have a great team in this corridor, working in this corridor. From Caltrans and Bijan Sartipi and his staff, many of whom are here tonight, the two transportation agencies, the TAM and SCTC, and the two leaders that they have, the SMART organization and Farhad's work with that. Dennis Mulligan is here from the Golden Gate Bridge and Transit District. Just a really terrific team of people working on transportation in Marin and Sonoma counties. So I think that is a positive start. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to be setting the stage as part of my presentation, and I'm the Dr. Doom of the presentation today because it's not a pretty picture. In spite of the fact that Marin and Sonoma counties have done fairly well in some recent funding programs, and because you have these local sales tax programs in place, that's been positive. But in a way, it masks the fundamental problem that Congressman Huffman mentioned in terms of the structural financing for transportation. So if I could go to the next slide, we all know that California is the land of opportunity, we like to say. We're looking at a population that's going to grow fairly dramatically in the next several years. We're the 8th largest economy in the world, which always amazes me. $1.9 trillion in gross state product. We have an unparalleled quality of life. I was telling somebody today that any time I have an opportunity to drive up to Sonoma County, I take it because I think Napa, Sonoma, Marin, this whole area is one of the most beautiful parts of the state of California. So we are lucky in many, many ways. However, next slide. Even though we're the land of opportunity, California ranks 48th in the nation in the condition of our highways. Can you imagine that? It used to be that Arkansas had the worst schools in the nation when people would be talking about schools. Mississippi, Arkansas, nobody wanted to be in that group. Well, folks, we're there when it comes to our public transportation infrastructure. 48 in the nation. Our streets and roads are failing. I don't have to tell anybody in this area about that, those of you that drive on local streets and roads. Our drivers, including Bijan Sartipi, the district director of Caltrans, lose close to 100 million hours a year sitting in traffic. Bijan added probably a couple more hours to that number. Most of the expected population growth in the U.S. is going to take place in urban areas, and that means modernizing our aging transit systems and construction of new ones is becoming a much more imperative need. Next slide. If you look at our infrastructure report card, it is dismal. In terms of pavement, 58% of California roadways require rehabilitation or pavement maintenance. 87% of our counties have an average pavement rating of at-risk or poor. 25% of local streets and roads will be in failed condition by 2022 under our current funding levels, and 6% of the nation's 10 worst urban pavement conditions in corridors exist in this state. Now that's, again, a pretty dismal report card. There's more, and it's not good news. California's bridges, 20% require major maintenance or preventative work, 6% require complete replacement, and 55% of locally owned bridges will require rehabilitation or replacement over the next 10 years. You've read about bridges in Pennsylvania, in New York, and other parts of the country that are closing down or reducing weight limits because they are not in good shape. In California, our bridges are comparatively in better shape than our roads because we have earthquakes in California. And the seismic retrofit program that Caltrans and local agencies have been conducting has helped make those bridges a little bit safer. But it's still not a good report card. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, you're there. Congestion. 14 of the nation's 20 most congested transportation corridors in California. 66% of our major urban highways are congested. So this does not get any better. If you look at the poor road conditions, what do they cost Californians? Well, it's a total of $16.6 billion annually. What does that mean to you? If you drive in California, you're paying an average of $700 per year more in the cost of maintaining and keeping your vehicle in shape to use these roads that are breaking down. That's a pretty significant chunk of dollars. You pay about $350 in gas taxes on average. Seems to me $700 a year is a pretty significant add-on. So if you think you're not being taxed because of the condition of our roads, you are. And our roads, the poor roads, contribute to more than 1/2 of U.S. highway fatalities. Isn't that amazing? Think about it. That's more than driving without a seatbelt. That's more than drunk driving. It's more than speeding. Poor road conditions. And if you look at our other infrastructure from a transit perspective, 46% of our bus fleet is beyond the 12-year replacement life set by the Federal Transit Administration, and $37.2 billion is the projected level of investment needed to bring our existing transit capital assets to a state of good repair. Pretty sizable dollar liability there. Excuse me while I fumble with these papers. Next slide, please. And rail. You're interested in rail with the SMART program here. Our rail program has challenges too. $3+ billion is the 10-year capital shortfall, and $1.4 billion is the 10-year operation and maintenance needs. And yes, we do have a rail system in California. We have 3 intercity rail services supported by the state. Amtrak operates those. Those are the 2nd, 4th, and 5th busiest rail corridors in the country. In fact, with very little investment, the run between Los Angeles and San Diego could become the busiest rail corridor in the country, exceeding what happens in the Northeast Corridor. I mentioned earlier that Marin and Sonoma counties have done pretty well over the past couple of years because of your local sales tax programs and because you did receive a lot of money from the Proposition 1B. That was the bond program that was approved by voters in November of 2006, some $20 billion that was raised for transportation. And a lot of it went into the 101 corridor, which helped improve that corridor immensely. Imagine what it would be like if it had not had that investment. Let's go to the next slide, please. But even with those programs, the neglected improvements, the amount of the neglected improvements in this state on our transportation infrastructure are absolutely staggering. And that is $295 billion over the next 10 years. Actually, this was an assessment done by the California Transportation Commission in 2011 through 2021, $295 billion. I always tell people that that number goes over everybody's head because it's just so huge. But the fact of the matter is that breaks down to $29.5 billion a year. If you look at it from the standpoint of streets and roads, we need an additional $6 billion a year. If you look at it from the standpoint of state highways, we need an additional $6 billion a year. And if you look at it from a transit rail perspective, we need another $6 billion a year. So it's about $18 billion a year for those modes of travel. So let's look now at our funding issues. You heard from Congressman Huffman about the situation at the federal level, and he is absolutely correct. One of the major reasons that we're in the problems that we are at the federal level is because the gas tax is no longer carrying the freight. It was a great user fee. In its heyday, it was providing all of the dollars necessary to complete the interstate system and to make a lot of other investments around the states. Now it is tired and old, and that's primarily because the decline in the purchasing power, as the Congressman indicated, it hasn't been increased since 1993. And then also, if you look at the dollars that are being produced, they simply are not being used particularly productively, and that has a real problem. But the biggest issue is the fact that the fuel efficiency of our vehicles are improving. That's good from a public policy perspective in a lot of different areas, but it doesn't help with transportation. And by the next 10, 12 years, we're going to see only half of what we used to produce from the gas tax revenues coming into transportation. So that is a problem that has to be addressed. And then the Congressman also indicated the status of the Highway Trust Fund. California, as he indicated, is not currently slowing down project work. States like Arkansas, I hate to pick on Arkansas, but states like Arkansas that don't have any state money, get 85% of their dollars from the federal government, have already stopped moving projects forward. They can't enter into contracts without assurances that there are going to be federal dollars to reimburse what they pay. In California, we have a bit of a cushion, a little bit bigger state highway account, but we're going to have to slow down very quickly if this issue isn't dealt with in the early fall. So that's problematic. At the state level, same thing. Decline in gas tax revenues and purchasing power, an increasingly fuel-efficient fleet that is significantly cutting into the amount of revenues produced. And if you look at Proposition 1B, again, great program, $20 billion in bonds, $13 billion went into capital improvements. That money has been well spent. You probably don't know this, but that program was effectively managed by the California Transportation Commission, and I think very quickly delivered by Caltrans and the local agencies working on the program. That's why you have some of these improvements that are just wrapping up in place on the Highway 101 corridor. There's been a past diversion of transportation revenues. No wonder the public doesn't trust us when we talk about give us more money to spend on transportation, and then these dollars get borrowed to go to other programs to support a general fund situation in Sacramento. That is problematic, and that has to be stopped. There's just a huge mistrust of government and the ability of government to spend the dollars on what we tell you we're going to spend it on. So that is extremely problematic. I have a chart here that I want to close on as the last slide, if we can get to that. And this is what we call our cliff chart. This is somewhat famous, and I'll just explain it to you. It looks pretty complex, but these colors represent different pots of money. So the red is the bonds. This is your local money, including your Measure M dollars that you have. Other is the green. That's primarily the State Transportation Improvement Program, which used to be the bulwark for funding transportation projects No longer. That STIP is declining in value, and there's very little money in that pot. And then we have this thing called SHOP, the State Highway Operations and Protection Program, which is the money we need to maintain our existing system. Again, $8 billion in annual needs, and we're only spending $2 billion a year. Now, look at this pinnacle. When the bond program was going hot and heavy, that level was at $7 billion a year. Congressman Huffman talked about the federal money, and these are the state dollars. Today, we're down to just over $3 billion a year because of the decline in funding. Caltrans does a look ahead every quarter. That is, they let the construction industry know how much work is going to be out there for the next year. In June of 2010, the number was $3.8 billion. Caltrans was saying, we're going to spend in our capital program over the next year $3.8 billion worth of project work. 1 year later, that number had dropped to $1.3 billion. That's the state we're in, folks. And while we've had some programs that, as I said earlier, have masked the problem, it is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. Final slide, please. So here's our current challenges. Prop 1B is over. It's done. It was a great program. We got a lot done with it. We did make some significant, much-needed improvements. We've got a declining source of revenue with the gas tax in terms of its less money and declining purchasing power. We've seen a diversion of existing transportation revenues. That needs to stop. And there are no state or federal solutions on the horizon. We're hoping that with people like Congressman Jared Huffman in the Congress, that we will see at least a temporary solution to the federal problem soon. But we have tried a whole variety of different ways of increasing transportation dollars at the state level. Gas tax, we talk about a 10% gas tax increase, and I'm almost through here to get on to the next panelist. 11% support. We did substantial polling last year. People don't want to pay more on the gas tax. Bonds, they're finally getting that bonds aren't free. They don't want to necessarily incur the debt for another substantial bond issue. We tried the vehicle registration fee, no dice. We tried the vehicle license fee. That's the dreaded car tax that Governor Schwarzenegger and Governor Davis had a big war over. Nobody's interested in that. Weight fees are currently being spent on debt service for transportation bonds. Now, that makes some sense in the fact that it's a transportation expense, but these were general obligation bonds. They weren't supposed to be paid for with transportation revenues. We tried to get those dollars back to the transportation program, $1 billion a year. Not had much luck in the state legislature and with the governor on that. The governor, to his credit, did in fact pay back $350 million of loans that had previously been borrowed from the state highway account. We're very pleased with that. There's cap and trade funding that's been made available, not much for local streets and roads or highways. And then finally, everybody is looking forward to that solution in the future, which is supposedly going to be very helpful to us and maybe replace the gas tax as the source of funding for transportation, and that's called the vehicle miles travel tax. Well, raise that with the public and see the reaction that you get, because there's a lot of concerns about privacy, there's a lot of concerns about other things, and those issues have to be addressed before that particular mechanism is placed before the voters for approval. Bottom line, and I didn't mean to make this as much of a doomsday report as it probably was, but that is setting the stage. That's what we're up against, folks. And the bottom line is we need your engagement, and your presence here today is an indication that this is of interest to you, and this is something that you think is important. Thank you.
Dijon, you want to go next? Take it away.
Good evening. Thank you, Congressman, for having this very important get together here to talk about what has been a very important issue in the last, as long as I can remember, in the last 10 pollings that were done. Transportation has always come up as the top 3 most important issues that the public is facing. It affects the quality of life. It was not planned for me to be here late. I apologize for that. It was the fact that we're doing a lot of work in this corridor, and a lot of work needs to be done to continue the improvements that We have seen here to make sure that the delay and the congestion in this corridor is addressed. I experience this once every couple of weeks. All of you experience this at least twice a day, to go back and forth from work to home. And it affects the quality of your life. It's always hard to follow Director Kempton, because everything that needs to be said is said, and it's hard to be on the same panel with him. We've done a number of these events, and we keep repeating each other. I'll try to modify some of the things that I was going to say to make sure that I do not repeat too many of the points that Director Kempton raised. As I mentioned, the congestion in this corridor and overall in Bay Area is increasing. We did have the dip when the economy tanked. It is coming back, and I can tell you that in every corridor in Bay Area, what we are measuring and monitoring is an increasing congestion and demand, which affects directly in productivity, in quality of life. People are spending time sitting in traffic, burning gas, creating more greenhouse gases, and then not getting the production that we need. Just a little background as what the department is doing in recent past. First of all, today, as we were speaking, Caltrans in District 4 in Bay Area, which covers the 9 Bay Area county, we are working in construction with over 144 contracts that is ongoing. And the value of those contracts exceeds $4 billion. At one time, that value was over $6.3 billion. So we are in a downgrade, and as soon as we accept the largest project that we have undertaken, which is the Bay Bridge, that number is going to drop to half. So very, very soon, before the end of this year, we're going to see in the Bay Area the number of capital improvement projects to go down to about $2 to $2.5 billion. That's still a lot of work that is going to be ongoing, but it is not to the levels that it has been, or to the levels that it needs to be in order to address the issues and the challenges that we all face. Transportation funding has been very complex. It used to be that the federal money, as Director Kempton mentioned, still in some of these states, used to be the bulk of the money that used to come to transportation. That is not the case any longer. 60% of all of the funds that is spent in transportation comes from local sources, from South counties, from the toll in our area, the toll bridges and all of the tolls that's collected brings in tremendous amount of resources to transportation. And if it wasn't for the sales tax and for the good partnership that we have with Maureen and Sonoma, we're lucky to have partners such as Suzanne and Diane to be able to use their resources to couple up with ours to make sure that these projects move forward. We still do have a lot of work to do. Next year, we're planning to deliver 77 projects in my district, but that only adds up to about 400 million. So a lot of the small projects are going to be undertaken. Last year, we delivered all of the major projects, all of the mega projects here in this region, which included the Caldercut Tunnel, the Bay Bridge, the Presidio Parkway, and the Devil Slide Tunnel in San Mateo County. Here in this county, closer to home, we've been working very hard and in collaboration with the two agency or partners in delivering a substantial amount of improvements in the Narrows, in the Sonoma, Marine Sonoma Narrows. And that's, we're talking about the 17-mile, 16-mile distance overall in the entire Marine and Sonoma. In the recent past, we have delivered over $1.2 billion worth of work. But for the Narrows itself, which is estimated to cost just over $700 million, we have delivered over $400 million of that. About $250 million is left in order to actually get the lanes built. As I was coming in today, we were doing very good, and I had a partner coming with me, so we used the carpool lane. But as soon as we got to Atherton, everything bad. We came to the street. For a second, I thought actually I would make in time. And as soon as we got to Atherton, the traffic stopped, and it did not move until we pretty much got here. So there's still tremendous work to be done. We are investing in the area of the Narrows, trying to purchase all of the rights and the right-of-way that is required for that project to add a 16-mile of HOV. But the latter portion of the corridor actually does not include the HOV funding. And that is the portion that is missing, and that's the portion that we are going to be working on. We've been working very collaboratively, looking at multimodal transportation. The road itself is not going to be the answer to all of the issues that we have, and by itself is not going to move everyone that wants to move in that corridor. Having the bus system and the transit system, and now when SMART starts operating, is going to be complementing what we've done on the roadway. And the addition of the bikes, it's certainly another way of getting people around. So we are certainly looking to make sure that all modes of transportation is addressed, and that there's flexibility and choices in that, including in this corridor. And of course, in Marina and Sonoma, bike and transit has been very important public, and we're glad that those projects are also moving forward. And it's not just the freeway, but the other modes of transportation. As I look at this corridor and look into the future, the presentation showed that there is a shortage of funding, and we made substantial progress utilizing both the stimulus funds that came to the department. There was about $3.57 billion worth of federal money that came in, one time only. It moved a lot of projects forward, and we stepped up and actually partnered with our partner agency and delivered all of those projects. And the one-time funding of the bond also helped us. And that chart, that mountain chart, showed that a lot of progress was made. We improved the pavements and the potholes and added HOV lanes. And it was mostly for congestion. Our corridor, our CMIA, corridor mobility improvement account, which was the $4.5 billion portion of the bond, helped us in reducing congestion during the downtime. But as I mentioned, we're coming back up in congestion, and we need to continue on focusing on this corridor. There is not one source of fund that is going to be addressing this. The state has made substantial investment and has made this a priority in our interregional funding. Our ITIP is what it's called. And a number of projects are actually funded through that source of fund. And we're going to continue on looking at that as being a source, trying to address some of the shortfall within this corridor. But that in itself, given the size of our ITIP funding, is not going to be the solution either. Certainly, we're lucky that we have the sales tax here in this county that would help address some of that shortfall. Federal funding, we're looking to see if the Highway Trust Fund is going to stay solvent. I don't know if it was mentioned earlier that the trust fund would probably run out of money in August. So we're very concerned about that. And without the federal, local, and the state funding, we will not be able to address the needs that we have in this corridor or anywhere else within the region. I know that Diane and Suzanne will be talking more in depth about some of the projects within each individual counties, the construction that is ongoing. But we need this partnership to stay strong, and we need the resources of all of these agencies in order to be able to finish this corridor and address the congestion in the Monessen-Sonoma-Narrows area.
Thank you very much, Bijan. And since I said nice things about Will before he spoke, let me make sure everybody knows that in addition to delivering big projects, Bijan is really an amazing partner on all sorts of local things as they come up. He's a troubleshooter, he's a problem solver, he's the first person to call you back when you have a crisis, and you just couldn't ask for somebody more responsive and accessible, so we're always glad to work with him. And I'll say nice things in advance about all the others too, but I think we're going to go to Diane. Sorry, Suzanne next.
Thank you, good evening. My name is Suzanne Smith, I'm with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. And it's a large panel up here today, and you might be thinking, you know, is this just kind of government bureaucracy? But I gotta tell you, it is truly, you've heard the phrase, it takes a village. It takes a significant team, federal, state, and local, and regional, to pull together this massive infrastructure program, whether it's our highways, our local roads, or our transit systems. Our role at the Transportation Authority, we're a very small public agency. We represent all of the cities and the county. My board of directors is made up of a city council member from each of the jurisdictions, as well as members of the county board of supervisors. Councilmember Mike Harris, who's here this evening, serves on my board representing Petaluma, as does Supervisor Rabbit. And we have kind of two main charges. The first is long-range comprehensive transportation planning. So trying to look ahead, working with our local partners at all modes about what we will need in the future based on population projections, traffic conditions, et cetera. And then our second main priority is funding. We try and go get money so that others can do projects. There are 8 of us in my office, so I often say I don't actually build anything or drive any buses or do any of those functions, but we work very closely with everyone in the community who does, and we are a primary liaison with Caltrans in helping deliver the 101 corridor. That is not my slide. So there's been there's been a lot of discussion about the funding picture, and I have a spreadsheet because that's what we do. I like a good dollars and cents transportation spreadsheet. So I put together kind of a summary to show you kind of the volume of funds that we have used in the 101 corridor specifically, but in particular how we've leveraged our local sales tax money. So 10 years ago, voters in Sonoma County passed Measure M. We dedicated 40% of that to the Highway 101 corridor. That amounted to about we estimated about $140 million. And our charge was to go find other money to get these projects built. Our timing was good because 2 years later, the state passed Prop 1B, which both Will and Bijan spoke of. And from that program, we received, between Marin and Sonoma, over $320 million. Now, if we had received our population share based on a statewide distribution, that would have been right around 70 million. So we did okay. The $323 million coupled with our local money and coupled with some state and federal gas tax money, as Bijan mentioned, our interregional, the discretionary funds from Caltrans, we've been able to build the projects that you are driving on today or that you see under construction throughout the Petaluma area and Marin, northern Marin right now. Having said all that, that's the good part. Then I get to the part that mirrors what Will was talking about, and that is, what do we do about the $250 million that we need to finish the corridor? We've spent about $1 billion. We need another $250. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we did a really good job bonding and bringing forward our local sales tax money, but we've used it all. So
We're trying to catch up.
everybody turn on their side.
Left or right side?
Sorry. The issue, so we really don't have any local funds left for construction, but what we have done is use those funds that we did have to get the projects ready to go. So we have environmental clearance, we have the design complete. What comes next is temporary construction easements and things like that for right-of-way related to construction and then actual construction. So in Sonoma County, to do the project through Petaluma, we need between $90 and $100 million. And I don't want you to think I'm using these big round numbers because we don't quite know what we're talking about. I'm using big round numbers because, quite honestly, it really depends on what year we get the money and what year we can build the project. There's about a 3% escalation that we use for each year that goes by that we aren't able to build the project. So our best estimate at this point in round numbers is about $250 million between the two counties. Through Petaluma area, actually this is a great slide. So if you could scroll up just a little. So do that. Oh, click. There we go. So the gray parts, which are kind of hard to see, the gray parts are what we've funded and are building. The pink part there, C2, is the phase through Petaluma that we need funding for. We've got it designed. If there was another stimulus package, for example, something similar to what was done a few years ago at the federal level, we could build that project. We would be out in construction in the next 24 months We have to do right away, that takes time, you can't do that until you have the construction money, but we could do it. The short phase there, B2 phase 2, we have really creative naming conventions. That small project is about $30 million, but what that project would allow us to do is actually open the carpool lane from the Petaluma Boulevard South area down to just across the county line, and we would actually be able to use that travel lane. You get a little bit further south and you run into Diane's territory that she'll probably speak to, but we face essentially similar funding shortfalls on the Marin side. So what are we gonna do about it? I ask myself that just about every day, and I'm constantly searching for what that solution is. By the end of our sales tax measure, another 10 years, we may be able to, if the economy remains strong and sales tax revenues remain strong, we'll be able to have probably 30 to 40 million in the next 10 years, but that's in 10 years. There are some opportunities and commitments that were made through the Grayton Casino for contributing private funds up to $20 million. There are opportunities every couple of years to get a very limited pool through the state, through the ITIP program. But truly, it is about cobbling it together. Unfortunately, I'm going to say it at the peril of getting the wrath of the congressman, but I love earmarks, and I would give anything if they came back, because quite frankly, that was the most expeditious way we got money for transportation in this county from the federal government. From a formula basis, we do. I mean, it's okay. But earmarks, we got $30 million for the Narrows. It got us going. It cleared the project environmentally. It provided the base funding we needed. So that's my pitch for earmarks. Or another stimulus program, either one. So that's kind of, I guess, my quick summary on the 101 corridor. Maybe it wasn't quick. But thank you for, I'm delighted at the turnout. I really am impressed at the interest in transportation. You know, I'm a transportation nerd who does this day in, day out. There's a few other of us in here, but I don't, always get the sort of sense that that this many people care about it, other than when my friends call me and tell me they're stuck in traffic. So it's nice to have a good group here. And I want to put one other topic on the table, not to get into necessarily today, but something that we're starting to think about for the future and really need to, and that is Highway 37 corridor. It's not our main street like Highway 101 is in Sonoma and Marin, but it is at risk. It's at risk just because it's congested, but it's at risk due to sea level rise, storm events, all of those things. So we may not use it daily as Sonoma County residents, or we might. There are those who do. But it will dramatically affect our local roadways, the east-west connectors, if something happens to Highway 37. So that's kind of the next big highway corridor thing on the horizon from the FCTA perspective, and I just thought I'd put my marker on the table for future discussion. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
That was terrific, Suzanne, and I'm all for the earmarks, so believe me, if we can find a way to bring them back, I will do everything I can to get you one.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go to your counterpart in Marin County.
Good evening. I'm Diane Steinhauser. I'm the Director of the Transportation Authority in Marin. There's a little hat in the back of the room if you want to throw $1 or $2 in there for widening the rest of the Narrows. We'd appreciate it. When we finished the major EIS for this project in 2009, we had a cost of $743 million, a famous number we will not forget. And it was pretty daunting to imagine that we would ever be able to come up with sufficient funding to do this 17-mile project. We've been able to raise about $420 million. That is pretty darn good. Just to give you a little perspective on what Will was talking about in terms of gas tax, in Marin, when you buy a gallon of gas, you pay 18.4 cents in federal tax and 18 cents in state tax. That's included in your price. That brings about $1.5 million a year to Marin County. So here I am sitting there needing about $350 million, getting $3 million a year. That's a lot of years. So unfortunately, we have a very good project, and it was shaped to meet the needs of many and to position us for opportunities to get funds and to address those needs. Between the safety improvements that we're making in terms of closing over 50 driveways, you're gonna see frontage roads starting to open up and you're not gonna have cars pulling off and on the Narrows in that segment between Novato and Petaluma. Between our goal to build a carpool lane to move people as efficiently as possible, which is a strong climate change incentive around the Bay Area, we're accommodating bikes, we're rebuilding interchanges so that we can not only move you as residents and business people, but we can move goods and services up and down the corridor. And all of those multiple facets we've been able to use those to our advantage to position us for funds. Once we got through that EIR-EIS process, the first thing we did was we looked at how to reduce the cost of the project. And we were able to reduce it by about $68 million, which was great. Between us, Caltrans, our partner, and our partner in Sonoma County, we got the cost down a bit. Not a lot, but everything helps. And then we started to look for funds from the federal government. Suzanne talked about earmarks. We were also able to cobble together some other federal funds that we get from MTC, from the state, from the region, and from us locally. So in Marin alone, we were able to pull together about $200 million to get the project started. The state very graciously loaned us gas tax, over $25 million of our gas tax. Remember, it's about 1.5 to 2 a year, so that's a lot of years of gas tax that we were able to borrow in order to do the construction that's out there now. So we're very proud of the fact that we have about $300 million under construction, providing a lot of jobs and funds moving into the local economy. That same multimodal kind of aspect of the project means we qualify for a lot of different fund sources. In Marin alone, we have 9 different fund sources that are pouring into the project. I think we're going to continue to do that. Part of the work that Bijan related to briefly was the fact that we have a very good structure for working out problems. Whether it's a challenge from a permit or a local landowner, we have a structure where we instantly get together and we deal with it. So we don't have delays once the work starts based on any issues that might come up. And we're going to continue to prioritize this project. I believe in both counties to try and find the funds that are available to be able to finish it. What might those funds be? Suzanne, I'm glad she broached the topic of dedicated funds from the federal government. That would be terrific. This is a very high-profile corridor. It's a lifeline. You can't get from the core urban Bay Area to anywhere north unless you drive through this corridor. So we need funds to be able to build this lifeline, to keep it operating, to raise it out of the floodplain, to eliminate more driveways, to address safety and the multimodal needs of all the users in the corridor. I think we have to maybe turn our heads a bit towards our friends at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and ask about bridge tolls. Can we take some of those tolls that MTC is perhaps...
Keep talking.
I'm talking. Can we possibly look at the dedication of bridge tolls in the future? We know there's quite a bit of traffic that crosses the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, pays the toll, and continues up into Sonoma County. So is that an option for us? And then finally, I don't want to underestimate and make sure you understand what an important goods movement core this is. Suzanne talked a little bit about 37. 101 has between 8 and 10% truck traffic on it. We saw that go down in a slower economy. It's back up again. So we know that between the federal government and the state government, the focus on goods movement is very critical. And we're hoping funds can come to us to be able to address the goods movement needs of this corridor, which includes the capacity increases. I think we're going to continue to work as a team to take what funds we have, to prepare projects, whether we have the environmental completed, we're doing additional design every chance we can to position ourselves for the next fund source that comes along. And like I said, this will continue to be a priority for both counties. So thank you very much for the opportunity to kind of focus some light on this. And it was difficult to get to where we were. I know when you're driving the corridor and you see a patch of grass and you wonder why you can't just pave a lane, right there and accommodate those congestion needs. It's much more complex than that. Between the interchanges and all the drainage, all the utilities, the project is a very complex one. But we've done good so far, and we're committed to continuing and finishing it. So,
Thank you, Diane, and that's, your question is a great segue to our two MTC representatives. Let's start with Jake as the Sonoma County representative.
Yeah, thanks for setting me up that way. I'm Jake McKenzie. I'm one of these reviled of people. I'm reviled because as an elected official from Rohnert Park, I find myself sitting as an appointed elected official on MTC, on SCTA, on SMART. And those of you who have gone through the hell of Plan Bay area know to which I speak. But I'm very proud to be a member of these organizations, and I would just say in an umbrella statement that you do have some remarkable partnerships here and some remarkable work that was being done through the recession that enabled us as a community in Marin and Sonoma County to take advantage because we were ready to go with projects and we were able to benefit from very cost-effective times and bids that came in lower. I'm thinking that those days are kind of gone at the moment. If you're a nerd like I am and you get up in the morning and after you've watched Wimbledon and then after you've watched a wee bit of World Cup and then you get on your device and you read Politico Transportation blog, those of you who want to follow what's going on in transportation, the Politico Transportation blog is great. And it'll tell you exactly how many days each day before the Highway Transportation Fund runs out. They do a running count on it. And so I'm very informed on these matters. You will be pleased to know that I have carefully prepared remarks. Suzanne knows how I deal with carefully prepared remarks. The stalwart staff at MTC have given me talking points for MTC Commissioner Jake McKenzie, and I'm going to pretty much ignore them. But what I am going to say is, and Kinsey's a veteran. I mean, I'm the freshman. This guy's the veteran of MTC work. But the one thing I learned when I was appointed by the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors to be the commissioner for Sonoma County was you have to work with the 4 North Bay County commissioners. Kinsey, Dodd and Napa, sparing the Dinaval commissioners in Solano County. And why would we have to do that? Well, politics does enter into the way MTC operates, because we've heard about the blessings that Diane wants to flow from MTC. Well, 4 votes, the 4 North Bay counties. How many other counties are there? There's 5 other counties. 2 of these counties have 3 representatives because they just added the mayor of Oakland and the mayor of San Jose. So when we go into battle mode for resources, the arithmetic ain't too great. How many is the total voting commissioners, Steve? 17. Yeah. So we have, and we, I think, have successfully, we've punched way above our weight. And this is something that I want you guys to realize, that we have to be fighting for these dollars just within the region. We've heard the doom and gloom. We've heard the reality talk from the hardworking executive directors. But also, there's this question of when we do go back to Washington, D.C., in our lobbying efforts, it's not like it used to be in the days of Jim Oberstar, when we could say, Congressman Oberstar, we really want you to come out to Marin County and see what we're doing in bicycling stuff. My God, the next thing you know, Marin has a pilot program for bicycle programs. That was the old days. These days are gone. And I can tell you, going back on water policy issues and trying to get monies on water infrastructure, again, transportation is one aspect of our infrastructure problems, and we're concentrating on that tonight, but we're also competing for other dollars as well in the context of this part of the 21st century. So I could repeat to you all of the figures that I got about the breakdown of SMART's toll funding and the breakdown of the dollars on the 101. You've already heard that, and you'll hear from General Manager Farhad Mansourian about the SMART project. But the message I want to leave with you is that the executive staff of MTC have been extremely supportive of the efforts of Commissioner Kinsey and myself to bring dollars to this part of the world. We have done well on the 101, as you have heard, and we have done well with SMART. Now, your dream nirvana of more Beto monies, we're kind of running out of RM2 Beto monies, are we not, Commissioner Kinsey?
Yes.
We've gotten our mitts on them, and in fact, recently, $20 million worth of mitts on them, and hopefully, Congressman Huffman, when the Tiger Grant comes up, and we finally got an MTC region-wide priority, which we've never managed before. We now have a priority, but 5% of the Tiger Grants get funded when they go back into the huge the huge federal arena.
Well, and I'll support that, but you should know the House majority just passed a transportation appropriation bill that dramatically stripped down the Tiger grants and took it in the wrong direction.
Well, we always like to have
I voted against it.
a good dose of reality when we're having these discussions. So even although I'm an optimist, I love my work. I love the fact that we have these partnerships, and since this was totally impromptu and I didn't tell Kinsey what the hell I was going to say, Steve, hey, take it away.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here and being interested in what we can do. And, you know, I think we've heard such a wide range of reasons why we are where we are, but we haven't really dug in too deep on what are we going to be really able to do about it in the near term. And what I was impressed by is Will for the state asked the feds for the money. If you heard the region ask the state for the money, the locals ask the region for the money, and in the end, it's going to be the locals that have to pay for it ourselves. Our self-help sales taxes are really the anchor of our future. So pay close attention to how your money is being spent locally. Make sure that you're satisfied that it's being well spent, and invest in it, because this is really where we can make a difference in the near term and the long term. Having said that, you know, we have done well. We do have strong support from MTC. As a commissioner on MTC, I could point to a number of things, a number of tens of millions of dollars that have come to Suzanne and to Diane and to, more importantly, the public who live and work in Sonoma and Marin counties. MTC right now, as it relates to what can we be doing today to be making changes here, in Marin and Sonoma County, the Clipper card, the connectivity card to local transit is going to be coming to our communities, our transit agencies in the next year. It's going to be coming even more quickly, perhaps in Marin. Continuing to use technology, the 511 info. We all want reliability, but the next best thing to reliability is to know when it's coming in real time, and getting real-time information to folks and getting it to them where they are in their smartphones or their computers, I think is an important thing. The other things that we're doing is locally we are bringing together all of these transit agencies. And one interesting little factoid for us is that in the Bay Area we have over 20 transit agencies. All of Denver has one, all of Seattle has one, all of New York has one. We are unique in having all of these different transit agencies, and so a Clipper card is a necessity here because we have so many different agencies and we're trying to connect them up. And of course, with the SMART train coming, we want to connect our bus services, the different bus services that we have, to the SMART train. So that's an important planning effort that's underway right now. We're also trying to speak with our state partners at Caltrans about the importance to provide us with more design flexibility. The regulatory process, the risk avoidance that we have built into the design standards are costing us a fortune. and they're taking forever to get things done. We know that we can be more cost-effective and quicker in our responses, and there's work to be done there, and we're working on that to make those changes. An example of that that I'll use in our own county is the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, where there's 2 shoulders on that bridge. There's no shoulders on the Bay Bridge. We want to be able to use one of those shoulders during commute hours to move people across that bridge instead of having them backed up in a parking lot file all the way through our county down to the Golden Gate Bridge. Getting the regulatory environment to understand the value of something like that is as challenging as any change of signage or other physical improvements that are going to be needed there. You know, in the end, we know that the biggest missing partner in this is the money partner. And so you're going to see over time the sort of privatization and the user fee movements around funding transportation, because with the federal government retreating, with the uncertainty that we've experienced at the state, where there's only so much that the locals can do through taxation. And so we're seeing these experiments in express lanes, in public-private partnerships like on Doyle Drive, and I think you need to pay attention to that. But at MTC, we're trying to close some of the leaks. So for example, we tried to get a bill through the legislature this year that would have captured the $8 million a year in lost bridge tolls because people are using temporary tags and they never get found if they avoid the tolls. And so there are leakages that we can be closing in the revenue streams, and we're working on them. The express lanes will generate funding both for those lanes and for transit within those corridors. And in San Francisco, you're seeing some very innovative stuff with pricing, demand pricing. So you pay one price at one time of day and another at another time of day for your parking. And the way you treat your parking definitely affects the way people move around. I'm going to give Congressman Huffman, he came to look for solutions. I'm going to give him my own short list of things I'd like to see him do. And the first one is, of course, extend MAP 21. The federal government could run out of money for all of the project's commitments it's made by this summer. Work with both sides, like you do very well, Jared, to get that done. That's first and foremost. Keep transit in the bill and keep active transportation, which we love in the North Bay, both Sonoma and Marin, in that bill. The second thing is, I think with your district being the Redwood Empire itself, that you and your office could actually help us organize a corridor wide, it's not just Marin and Sonoma, but a Redwood Empire corridor that captures the goods movement issues that Diane was mentioning and the interest that Congress has in that, and the interest all the way up and down 101, and get them into a bundle, because we do find, as we did with the Marin Sonoma Narrows, if we have a big idea, we can attract money, and that attracts more attention. So help us put together a Redwood Empire investment package for our corridor. A small thing is to understand that the Marketplace Fairness Act, and this is sort of a stretch for most of us, but here's the idea of taxing e-commerce. You know how many corporations now, the internet business, they're selling without paying local and state sales taxes. In California, we rely on those taxes for our transportation. So if you can get that e-commerce bill, Marketplace Fairness, passed in a bipartisan way, it benefits everyone, but especially us in transportation. And then I think that I will close by saying that I think we need to be more creative in this area. An excellent example that I often share, and seems like no one's listening, I'll try it again, is take advantage of these shoulders. Put a bus on the shoulder. Let Dennis Mulligan run his Golden Gate bus on the shoulder of the road when everyone is sitting there in traffic, and make a strong statement for transit. Give an advantage to those who take transit. Along this Narrows corridor, it would be a real-time savings. That's an example. If anybody's noticed, instead of saying, kids, you can never go back to school because we like traffic the way it is today, let's say, put more attention into what is causing all of the congestion because of our morning and afternoon traffic coming out of our schools. Invest in our Safe Route to School programs. Make them a part of our community. Accelerate our Safe Route to School programs. These are things that could be done. I think that in the end, a lot of us have to take responsibility too. We've grown to be a county, and I think it's probably a corridor or a region that has one car for every living person from infancy on. And as soon as someone's 16, we hand them the keys and say, you go do your life and I'll see you somewhere down the road. So we do need to also think about the fact that we are a part of the solution by the way we use our vehicles and our transit to move around. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much. That was a great panel. Thanks for ending on a problem-solving note, too, with some ideas. We're obviously behind time, but I thought the extra depth in that first panel was beneficial for all of us, and so we'll try to fly through this second panel. Nobody flies better than Farhad Mansourian from SMART. He's going to come and kick it off, but we're also going to be joined in the second panel by Dennis Mulligan from the Golden Gate Bridge District, Nancy Whelan from Marin County Transit District, Steve Schmitz from Sonoma County Transit, and Joe Rye from Petaluma Transit. And folks, we will get to questions and public comment. If the panelists are able to stay around, I think we would all benefit. You may be able to help us answer some of the public questions. We'll understand though if some people need to take off. Welcome, Farhad.
Thank you, Congressman. Farhad Mansourian, I'm the General Manager of SMART. I want to take this time to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and being here, and thank Congressman for arranging this. And I also want to thank your district staff who are always a phone call away and problem solvers, so thank you very much. I will give you a 5-minute update, and there are brochures outside that will do the same thing. You know, our job in SMART is to connect residents and visitors and schools and jobs and recreation all together. The first phase under construction is 43 miles long that at this point goes from Sonoma County Airport all the way to downtown San Rafael, about 10 stations and many pieces of multi-purpose path. What I want to report to you is today somewhere just a little bit over 75% of the commuters in Marin, as you heard from our panelists, in Marin and Sonoma, they either commute within these two counties or they go back and forth among the two counties. And the train and the pathway will provide just another option. We're not here to solve the traffic problem. We're here to provide another option to school and running errands and the commute and the recreations. And also the very, very major tourism that we have in Marin and Sonoma County for weekends. We are anticipating to begin service late 2016. And the pilot car that is made specially for us just arrived in Chicago and will arrive here about spring 2015, and you will see us run up and down the corridor and begin the test at that time. The construction is in full force, and I'd like to give you some stats. We have completely rebuilt 20 miles of a 100+ year track. We have rebuilt 5 bridges, and we are building 7 more as we speak. We have rebuilt 36 at-grade crossings where we're getting a lot of kudos because some of these crossings were a car could vanish into them. They were in very bad shape. And we have built 8 of the station platforms. What do all of these, why are they important? They're important because I want to tell you that our board has been adamant, and in addition to the board members you saw here, Mr. McKenzie, you saw Mr. Rabbit and Deborah Fudge, also in the audience. One of the big ticket items for us, the direction given to me was how can we utilize local forces? I know you have another panel who will talk about that, but all the construction I mentioned to you, we use 63% of our subcontractors are local. And that was about half of the construction hours. So I want you to do a math. That is more than 122,000 local labor hours. And that's people who put food on their table and either pay their mortgage and send their kids to school. In addition to that, about $12 million of local economy services and supplies was used. I want to take this time and tell you that all of this came to a halt last year, where we got tangled up with the federal and regional permits. And that's when, at the direction of my board, I contacted Congressman and we had a meeting. We took him on a high rail tour and he saw what everything is basically stopped. And between him and his terrific staff, you can see right now hundreds and hundreds of people are working up and down. So we're very grateful. You know, he doesn't just give speech, he really delivers. In addition to that, just in a couple other notes for you, we are very proud of being able to purchase Miramonte. This is a 60-acre property right between Marin and Sonoma County. As you know, when you go through the permit process, you have to, when we fill some of the marshland and some of the other areas, we had to come up with mitigation. And our board decided that, you know, instead of doing a lot of different pieces of mitigation, we purchased a historical site and we're turning that back into Mother Nature. And we're going through the permit process. So you need permits to turn things back to Mother Nature. I want to leave you with a couple of stats. You heard Caltrans director talking about how busy 101 is. You know, once we complete in a couple of years and start our passenger service, what takes right now between 90 minutes and when 101 is crazy, 120 minutes, which is going from north of Santa Rosa to downtown San Rafael. We will be finishing that just under 60 minutes. And while you're traveling, you have a Wi-Fi, and you know we also have coffees and what have you. So it's going to be a significant tool for those of you who are commuters. And again, I want to emphasize one of the major benefits that we're going to have in addition to the train is the multi-purpose pedestrian path. But I want you to know that there are a couple of $1 billion worth of sales and economy that the tourism brings to Marin and Sonoma County. And if we're able and successful to get to Larkspur, we can tap into the San Francisco tourism, and that will run into hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, because those tourists are used to getting on a ferry, then get on a train and get as close to Napa County as possible. So all we're trying to do—
Our wine is better.
Thank you. Yeah.
Napa makes auto parts, Sonoma does not.
So, you know, all we're trying to do is trimming traffic congestion with the use of transit. So with that, thank you again, Congressman, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Farmer.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Mulligan. I'm the general manager for the Golden. Can you hear me? I'm the general manager for the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District. I want to thank the Congressman for his leadership in transportation and for tonight's event. It is vital. Transportation affects the quality of life in our communities. It affects how good or bad we feel some days, depending on how long it takes you to get from point A to point B. And so this focus and your leadership is vital for us moving forward. With respect to your district, the Redwood Empire, as it was appropriately referred to by Supervisor Kinsey, the Redwood Empire has a long history of being creative in solving its transportation problems. If you look back to the late 1920s, folks in the Redwood Empire voted to tax themselves to build the Golden Gate Bridge. So the concept of self-help counties that Diane and Suzanne administer today are not new to this region. That having been said, the challenges are endless as the economy grows, the population grows. And so with the passage of time, our agency not only owns and operates Golden Gate Bridge, we are your regional bus and ferry provider here in the North Bay. If you want to get from Petaluma to San Francisco, it's on our bus, on our boat, or on our bridge. And we want to make that a first-class trip regardless of which way you go. With respect to our transit service, if you listen to the traffic reports in the morning news, you'll hear that traffic is going the speed limit on the Golden Gate Bridge. And the reason the traffic is going the speed limit is 25% of all trips in the port are on our buses and ferries. So our challenge is to provide first-class bus and ferry service that people want to ride, that they have a choice and they choose to ride. Depending on where you live and where you work, it may work for you or it may not. But you should care about it because while it may not work for your job and your job may not be near a transit stop, if your neighbors can ride the bus, if your neighbors can ride the boat, then there's more room for you on the freeway. Our success in getting cars off the Golden Gate Bridge, though, as you get closer and closer to Petaluma, wanes. And part of that is because our buses operate on the road network. And similar to Bijan tonight, when we get to Atherton, our buses that are carrying 50 people each grind to a halt. They have the benefit and luxury of HOV lanes in Marin County and parts of Sonoma County now. And so we're really thrilled with that. But for us to provide first-class service and to make it work, we really do need the narrows to happen. And so I'm very encouraged that there's this focus and this attention that's been ongoing for years, but it's not getting dimmer, it's getting brighter. And so I want to thank everybody for that. Because if we have a first-class HOV network in the North Bay, in this Redwood corridor, if we have local roads that don't have potholes in them, then folks will gladly embrace riding the bus, getting to and from work. I think that helps all of us. So I know time is of the essence, so I'll
You did
do
great.
my remarks with that.
Thanks very much, Dennis. The county side of our transit, so welcome, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Congressman Huffman, for inviting us. I'm Nancy Whelan. I'm the general manager of Marin Transit, and we're the local transit provider in Marin County. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, a brief one, and I'll go through it very quickly. While I think most of you know that the congestion on the corridor a lot of it is regional, there is quite a lot of local traffic that uses 101 because it is, of course, the major north-south artery in the county. And of course, our services use that as well. So that's one of our major issues with transit for us. It's just what Dennis had said. We really need to have that fixed and make it as popular as we can with transit riders as well by improving their speeds. The services that we provide, go ahead, sorry, next slide. We provide 6 programs through our service. Local services provided through the buses that we operate in partnership with Golden Gate Transit. We provide shuttle programs. We serve our seniors and disabled passengers through our local paratransit and mobility management services. Mobility management includes volunteer driver program and Catch a Ride, which is a taxi service. So we're providing all kinds of different services. We also serve rural and recreational services through our Stagecoach in West Marin County and the Muirwood Shuttle. Go on to the next slide. Some of the statistics, just quickly, the highlights here. We serve 3.4 million passengers annually. We are ranked 7th among the 29 some odd transit operators for total ridership and total ridership. We're 5th among the Bay Area's fixed route operators in our passengers per revenue hour productivity. So we're a pretty productive service given our size. Go ahead, next slide. Our riders, though, we have quite a unique passenger base here in terms of the people who ride our service. We have 45% are commuters, or work-related, the trips that are taken, I should say, are commuter or work-related trips. 25% of the trips are for school purposes. A number of our passengers are dependent on our local transit service, however. We have 21% of our riders are under 18. We have 57% that earn less than $25,000 a year, 77% earn less than $50,000 a year, and 32% have no access to a vehicle at all, compared to about 2% countywide. So we serve a very unique population that way. Our routes, go ahead. Okay, our routes, we have 30 total fixed route services. 6 of our 9 routes, our primary local routes, I should say, use Highway 101. So this is just a graphic of showing how we do go out to local communities, but most of the routes are actually on 101. In terms of congestion relief, those 3.4 million trips per year, or about 12,500 per day, we estimate that will reduce the number of cars on our county roadways by about 6,000 a day. So the transit service does provide a good amount of congestion relief. We're looking at school congestion. Supervisor Kinsey spoke earlier about this. We have 200,000 student trips, or about 1,500 trips, daily trips, and we're studying options to allow us to expand this. We think it's an important new element of our service. We have over 75,000 annual trips to Muir Woods, or about 2,000 transit trips per day. On the weekends that go to Muir Woods, we have something like 20 to 25% all of the visitors who go to the park come on our service. So it relieves congestion that way. Some things that we would like to see moving ahead in terms of the improvements that we would like to have some help with is just some of the broad things that Dennis mentioned as well. Improved connectivity with the regional bus and local bus and shuttles. We'd like to make sure that the station area is safe, that circulation and access improvements are addressed. We want to coordinate our fares and scheduling among the regional, and local services. We're trying to make transit the most attractive option. We want to have faster travel times using the HOV lanes if we can, using dedicated rights of way like SMART will use. We want to have better access, which includes first and last mile, so we can get you to and from those services. And then also just have a very high quality service that our passengers want to take and new riders want to take that's safe, clean, and reliable. So I think that's all I had for
That's terrific.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Let's
Yeah.
go to Sonoma County.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Schmidt. Thank you, Congressman Huffman, for inviting us all on the transit side to be here tonight. My name is Stephen Schmidt from Sonoma County Transit. I'm a senior planner. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our system in Sonoma County. For those of you that live in Sonoma County, you're familiar with the rainbow buses, we like to call them. That's what provides the countywide service within Sonoma County. We offer service 5:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and about 1.4 million passenger trips a year. 2/3 of those trips are adults and students. And some of our local routes also have senior ridership that's pretty heavily dependent. 20 weekday and 12 weekend routes. And like I said, we contract for some of the local service in the county. Roanoke Park, Cotati, the Russian River area, Sonoma Valley, city town of Windsor, and city of Sebastopol all contract for local service. We primarily connect the cities within the county and provide feeder service from the rural areas into the more urbanized areas. That's our role in Sonoma County. We do that with a fleet of about 50 heavy-duty vehicles. We're pretty proud to be one of the only operators that fuels our buses on compressed natural gas, and we're one of the few in the Bay Area that do that. And we've had a great partnership with the Regional Air District, Area Air Quality Management District, as well as Federal Transit Administration to do that. We have a compressed natural gas fueling system on site at our facility, and we've used federal funds and Air District funds to make that happen. So we've really had a big savings in our fuel costs by going with compressed natural gas. We save about $1.2 million a year in going with natural gas. We also provide paratransit throughout the county, about 45,000 trips per year. Some of the upcoming changes that we have are serving, you all know about the Sutter Hospital that's going up by the airport to replace their facility on Chenate Road. We're going to start providing service to that hospital coming up within the next 6 months. Of course, smart coordination. We all want to provide seamless transitions to the smart service coming up, and so we're going to be working with them. The Clipper card is coming up, another coordination measure that we're excited about doing, and it's going to provide some more good coordination throughout the county. But what we're all here about tonight is really about funding, and real briefly just talking about how we do it at Sonoma County Transit is on the sales tax side, we rely on Measure M and some state sales tax, mainly for our operating. For the capital side, that's where we rely on the federal government and Proposition 1B. And Proposition 1B is something that we refer to in our office as kind of manna from heaven. It came down and flowed down and filled our capital needs, especially on the vehicle replacement side. So we're sad to see that go, and we're looking kind of toward the federal transit side to help make up for some of those losses. Again, the federal transit funding and Prop 1B right now, they help on our capital replacement sides for vehicles and facility expansion. Again, we built our natural gas yard with the federal funding, and recently rehabilitated our yard with state of good repair federal funding. We're going to look for some of that funding to, let me mention the Petaluma Transit Mall. I don't want to forget that. Federal funding also paid for the Petaluma Transit Mall that a lot of you are familiar with over here. A good coordination project. As far as the Highway Trust Fund and What could happen for us if there were delays in that type of funding is, again, there would be delays in vehicle replacement and some of our facility projects. Our facility is celebrating 30 years this year, which is a big accomplishment, but again, we have a 30-year-old facility, so something on the federal side that we're going to be looking for is some funding to help us with that.
Sounds like another earmark request.
Well, I wish we could go back there. So I think that it won't really affect us on the operating side, but there could be delays on the capital side as far as replacing buses and facilities. We don't rely a lot on the operating side. I know some of the other agencies in the county do, and so it could affect them in a way. I think that's about all with my comments.
That's great. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it very much. And last, we'll hear from Joe Rye at Lima Level. And while you're getting ready there, Joe, why don't we ask Brian Ling, who will be our cleanup hitter, to come on up and join us here. Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Congressman Huffman. Thank you for putting this panel together. I'll be brief. We're the smallest transit agency in the region, so my minutes at the podium should be prorated by the size of our ridership. So I'll talk about a tenth as much as Dennis did. We at Petaluma Transit, we've been busy the last few years. We've rebranded and re-identified ourselves. I came on during the kind of the heart of the Depression, so in the last 5 years we've redone our fleet, we've redone our route network. We had to make a lot of those changes based on the acute funding shortfalls that happened in the late part of the last decade. So we went happily. We come out of that in a much better position. Our ridership's grown about 125% over the last 5 years. We've done that by focusing on markets that are naturally inclined to use transit if you provide a good product, and we try to endeavor to do that. So we've done really well with our student ridership base and with seniors to a lesser extent. Right now, our much like the last couple of presenters, the transit dependent are mostly our market. So right now, out of our say 370,000 annual rides, about 60% are by students. That's high school, junior high age, and the local junior college. We revamped the fleet. In order to meet this growth we've had to continue to try to get bigger buses. When I got here, they were all lower capacity, medium duty vehicles. So it's been challenging to keep up with our recent growth. We've added technology, so our paratransit service has got a scheduling software system that interacts with tablets on board the buses to be nimble and real time in the scheduling of that. We've got a mobile website now, phone trees, so we try to do as many things we can to catch up with the other agencies over the last few years. What does the future hold? Like Stephen just mentioned, we're also dependent mostly on the state sales tax and local measuring for our operating money. We get our federal money mostly or our capital money mostly from the federal sources. So if there indeed is a dry up and a shortfall from the Highway Trust Fund, it could cause us to delay purchase of buses. Would be the most acute first thing you might see happen. We have an order of 4 queued up for about a year from now that could be impacted. But the message I want to leave for the folks that came out tonight is the operating money is crucial. So I think we've remade ourselves, we've pinched every penny, we streamlined all we can. So you're not going to see us get a lot bigger than we are, say, next year if we don't see fundamental reform or an increase in operating funding from some source. But we have some cool projects in the mix. We're rolling out a real-time transit system next year, which is that's the trend. Everyone wants to know, did they miss their bus? How many minutes till their bus gets there? So we are in the midst of that procurement, and that should be on the street and operating next year. We've got a pilot Wi-Fi project on board, and so we've got that on one bus, and it's been doing great. So we're going to roll that out to the rest of the fleet over the next few months. And most importantly, we have our first ever night service extension starting in August. So I believe it's August 16th. We're going to extend. Right now we shut down at 7:15. So for a lot of folks, that's too early. Again, we just operate within the city of Petaluma. So we went out and got a grant. We thought if not now, when? So we got a grant that'll help pay for the first couple of years. We can establish the markets and go from there. So we'll be extending till 10/15 starting in August. And we're really excited to be working with the JC and other partners that have a need for travel at night. And I think that's about all I have for tonight. Thanks again for putting this together.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for having the public transit input. And our last speaker before we get to public comment and question is going to be the perspective from the business community here in Sonoma County, Brian Link.
Thank you. Yeah, our agenda here, regional, state, and federal officials, and one business guy. So, hey, here we go. The Sonoma County Alliance is a member of businesses, organizations, individuals, nonprofits, a few of you here in the room, about 40 years old. Our slogan is we are business advocates for a healthy economy, healthy community, and a healthy environment. We got started to build Warm Springs Dam. A bunch of businessmen in the community said we've got to get this built and work with the environmental community for their concerns. And transportation has been our second issue. We've been water and transportation for 40 years. We'll continue to do so because these issues truly affect our community, our environment, our economy every day, all day. And so it's very important to us and our membership. I don't want you guys drive the roads. That's why you're here. You read the papers. You know how difficult the solution is. It's been told to you very well tonight. I want to repeat a little bit what Mr. McKenzie said. As a business organization, it's very easy to be critical of the bureaucrats and the people our tax dollars go to provide solutions. This is the A-team. The people you heard tonight, they got it together. I don't have a worldwide breadth to compare it to, but we do talk to other communities in the state and a little bit in the western United States. This is the A-team that's here. We wouldn't have the money we have received so far if it wasn't for them. And I just want to give that plug. It's been mentioned before, but truly do have a great group. So lastly, I just wanted to say that the Sonoma County Alliance was a big supporter of Measure M. Very happy to do it, get it passed. We're a big supporter of SMART. And we're going to be a big supporter of the congressman getting our last $250 million.
That was a very strong close. We are at that point where we want to hear questions and comments from the public. We're going past time, so what I'd like to do is just say that we're going to go until around 8:15, and we'll cover as much ground as we possibly can. I see some hands up. Before we go, and I see one back here, before we do that, let me just see if the Petaluma prerogative is going to be exercised by either of these folks with their first question.
I have an observation, but they told me to do this, so let's start there.
All right, why don't we start right back here, Jenny? Yeah.
I'm Carolyn Leonard. I live in San Miguel. And I thought it would be interesting for you to know, they considered a good idea when you're doing public speaking to find out who you're talking to. And I was wondering who else is from Marin? Oh, thank you. And who else is from Sonoma County? Good to know you. Howdy, neighbors. Valuable to know to whom you're speaking. I have 2 points. I was wondering, in terms of funding, since this is a freight line, train line that's being built, it's not a passenger light rail. This is being built for freight and at public expense. I was wondering to move the garbage out of Northern California to Reno and to move the gravel from the Eel River Basin. I was wondering how much the freight companies will be paying back for the privilege of riding on public rails. And isn't that a great source of funding for some of the transportation issues we have? So that's a suggestion and a question, and I don't have any access to information about that. And then the second one is I had the privilege of being in Los Angeles during the 1984 Olympics, and all truck traffic was banned. I actually moved to the other side of town so I could continue going to school. And there was no traffic because all the truck traffic was restricted to evening hours. It employed a lot of new people because they had to have stores receiving goods at night, et cetera. And there was no traffic problem in this entire city of Los Angeles with many, many venues. So that is a suggestion. It might work. And it goes again to freight being a part of the solution instead of a part of the problem.
two suggestions and two questions.
All right, well, is Farhad still here from SMART? Farhad, one of the questions had, I think, how much revenue can come from the freight rail piece of our rail corridor? Can that be part of the solution for some of these other needs that we have?
You know, the passenger rail service that we are building, we are the one with your quarter cent sales tax and with some federal and state money are upgrading everything. The freight service will be utilizing our lines and our property for the freight service. Once they start developing customers, there will be a significant benefits in more than one way. One is instead of trucking major amount of goods, then it can be used by train, and that has the environmental. Also, the more businesses can use the freight, then more jobs will be created. As a matter of fact, recently, the mayor, at that time, the mayor of Rohnert Park said, hey, we have an interest from a major plastic manufacturer who says we're willing to move into town if we get a freight connection because it is cheaper for us than to do that. So there is a direct benefit and an indirect benefit as we start building that business. I hope I answered your question.
I think so. But is it also true, Farhad, the idea that this is a booming, lucrative freight rail corridor is maybe not quite right? NCRA seems to be kind of a chewing gum and string operation right now, as opposed to some burgeoning mover of goods.
Correct. Right now, the number of freight is 4 or 5 a week maximum. That's all the customers they have now. But as the passenger service begins and more businesses have the opportunity to rethink their business model, then there will be more opportunity for them. And that will then benefit the local because there will be more local sales tax, more local jobs, and more businesses moving into the cities and counties.
Okay. The second piece of the question was about whether an idea that seemed to work well during the LA Olympics of timing freight traffic only at night, scheduling basically of certain types of truck trips is an option for us. And I don't know if anyone from either the county transportation agencies or Caltrans is still here. Anyone want to take this one?
I'm stunned there was no traffic in the 80s in Los Angeles. That's pretty phenomenal. But I don't know whether the county would ever consider an ordinance such as that to mandate truck traffic at
There
night.
might be some federal preemption of
Yeah.
interstate commerce involved. And I don't know if there was federal legislation. We'd have to look into what happened in 1984, but I suspect that one's easier said than done. Bijan, did you have any thoughts?
No, I think the issue of the county actually having the ordinance would be an issue, and the businesses that would suffer, and having those noisy trucks to actually travel at night, depending on where they're delivered, would also be an economic impact. So there's more than just the traffic aspect of it. I think the economy part of it needs to be looked at. And it starts at the county level by an ordinance for us to start doing then a study to see if it's actually effective or not. I don't know exactly what the LA County did at the time of the Olympic back in '84, but we haven't done this anywhere here in this area. There's only one truck exemptions on our highways, which is 580 through Oakland, which was done. But we do have an alternate of 880, 238, 580, which is actually our freight corridor.
All right. So thank you for the suggestion. Let's go over here.
Hi, I'm Bria Schlottman with Kaiser Permanente. Thanks for having us here today. And transportation is very important to us as a large employer in San Rafael. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the work that you're doing. And there are some things that would certainly help us. Some of those would be increased capacity at park and rides. I do have employees who like to carpool, and I am hearing, especially here in Petaluma, that the park and rides are filling up. There are also some areas where our employees are having difficulty finding a place to park, to carpool. Those are some things that could help. SMART, we're very much looking forward to that and looking at how do we connect our employees to the SMART stations, whether it's from the SMART station to our buildings or from their homes to the SMART stations. I get asked about parking for that quite a bit as well. Another thing I wanted to say was the ride match system, like the 511 ride match system. We've had a number of employees try that and have found that it's very complicated and kind of cumbersome for them. It'd be great to see that maybe made a little bit more fun and easy. And those are just some small things that would really help us out as an employer. And I think Andy wanted to say a couple words. He's with Kaiser Permanente also.
Yeah, thanks again. So just wanted to also add some of the intangible benefits and risks that we don't always think about are impacts on our employees that we see in terms of stress, reduced morale when they're dealing with those long commutes. A lot of our employees come from Solano County across 37, as well as being Sonoma County residents and coming down to our medical centers in Petaluma and San Rafael. So that's a huge impact, so thank you for keeping the attention.
No, thank you for bringing that up. That's something we probably should have stressed more during our discussion, the toll that it takes on our productivity, on our collective frame of mind. And I see it all the time down in Marin County, where the school districts are having a hard time hanging on to teachers, because the teachers have to slog through that commute every morning and every afternoon. And so the impacts are far-reaching, and I appreciate you bringing that up as a large employer.
And before we go to the next question, I do also want to notice, I see there's a lot of hands, and I apologize for the time. We do have these cards, so if we don't get to your question tonight, I want to make sure you know that we will call you, make sure you get an answer, so please do fill out a card if you don't get a chance to talk tonight. Okay, here's our next person.
Yes, but first we're going to let Jake speak. And by the way, I'm finding that holding this microphone about a foot away seems to be the sweet spot.
I don't need the microphone. Two things. MTC, Steve Kinsey and myself and the Operations Committee are working on transportation management systems. One of the things that we are starting to study is the increased use of different sites for park and ride. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up, and so that's number one. A plug to CARMA, C-A-R-M-A, run out of the Regional Climate Protection Authority, right here under Suzanne Smith's direction and with the Climate Protection Campaign. Check it out online, and they're offering some very interesting opportunities for ride sharing.
Sit here, we may need you again.
Well,
Hi.
I'm always ready to talk.
Hi there. My name is Linda Vu, and I have a question for Congressman Huffman. If we can imagine looking at currently the infrastructure, we can have a thoughtful moment and look at the infrastructure right now of, say, outside the United States, of, say, in Iraq, what's happening to the infrastructure there right now, of the infrastructure in Syria, of the infrastructure in Libya, in East Ukraine. You have a situation right now where we have 500 troops on the ground in Iraq. We have drones flying over
I'm going to
Iraq.
ask you to get to the question, because I will answer it.
Right.
But I think we all know where you're going with that, and I'm happy to speak to it.
Great.
We just don't have a lot of time.
Great. Of the situation there. You have right now Obama violating the Constitution to go to war.
I'm going to ask you to
And the question is, there are grounds for impeachment. Will you fight for the grounds of impeaching Obama, just like Tim Kaine?
I'll answer your question. The answer is no. I will oppose any attempt to distract our country from real problems through an impeachment process, but I will absolutely continue to oppose our wars and foreign military engagements. And you can look at my votes on defense authorizations and appropriation bills in the last few months to actually see that. So let's go to our next question. Yeah, right over here.
I'm holding this back because it's too loud.
Okay, Peter Singleton, I'm from Larkspur in Marin County. And first a comment, not only are there people from Sonoma and Marin here, but also if this is an example of public hearings like this that I've been to before, there's generally a divide in the group of people that are here, and everybody of course has a right to be here and have their voices heard, between stakeholders who are folks who are basically getting funded by these kinds of programs, whether they're non-governmental organizations or developers or whatever, or agency people. And then the other people are simply citizens like myself who are paying the bills for all of these programs and also use these, the transportation network. I have a point for both Supervisor Kinsey, if he's still here, and Executive Director Steinhauser, who is. Ms. Steinhauser said that TAM, Transportation Authority of Marin, gets about $3 million a year in gas tax revenues. And I did a back of the envelope calculation, and I don't know if it's exact, and I'm sure it's not exact, but it's probably pretty close. And I figured that Marin residents pay about $36 million a year in gas taxes. And that doesn't even include the freight gas or diesel taxes. That's a lot of money, and only 10% of that, it looks like, is getting flowed down to fixing our roads in Marin. And Bay Area-wide, it's about $1.4 billion that goes to MTC. MTC's purpose for existence, the reason why it was set up, was to take the gas tax revenues from the feds and the state and to allocate them largely to the transportation network, which is about 80–85% of roads. So it seems like our road money, which is from gas taxes, is being diverted to other purposes, to planning grants for high-density housing and transit-oriented development, priority conservation areas, conservation easements, all that kind of stuff. But the primary job of those funds, the primary purpose of those funds, is to keep our roads maintained. So I would say the first thing we should do is stop diverting all those funds and use those funds to fix our roads.
All right, is Diane available to speak to that perhaps?
Yeah, and Jake McKenzie is available to speak to it as
Jake,
well.
why don't you?
First of all, under the Great Reviled Plan Bay Area, which includes the Regional Transportation Plan, a 4-year plan, the MTC is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are designated by law to, as the gentleman said, to distribute these monies. In California, of all the MPOs, MTC places the greatest number of dollars in operating the existing system, in maintaining the freeway system, and maintaining the transit system. I frankly have heard quite enough about all of this money being diverted to priority development areas and PCAs. If you look at the budget numbers, it is very clear. We have a record, and we stand in our record of supporting the maintenance of our systems and our roads.
All right, so that, I take that answer to be that the amount of
I'm
those,
disagreeing with the gentleman.
the amount is not significant relative to the other budget, is that?
Exactly.
Okay, Diane, do you want to add to that?
Ditto.
Okay.
Okay.
I disagree with his point, so.
Well, I'll be happy to show you the data.
Sure.
If you read the Plan Bay Area, it's all laid out there.
I've read it.
Okay.
I know you have.
Next up.
Okay.
Let's keep moving.
Richard Hall from San Rafael, assuming everyone can hear me without the feedback. I really just wanted to get a reaffirmation of transparency and honesty in the transportation planning process. Stepping back, what we've seen with Plan Bay Area was a disconnect. And I think now we need to see a restoration of trust. We've seen a series of events across Marin where the manifestations of Plan Bay Area were rejected. The PDAs were thrown out, as were the station area plans. And we've seen that station area plans were not about stations, they were about ridership and housing. So it's been a real break in the public trust. But finally, can we once and for all get rid of the myth that I keep hearing tonight, that basically this is all about reducing greenhouse gases by basically switching people from cars to transit? Because the California Air Resources Board, the MFAC data, if you look at the CO2 RUNX figures, actually shows that cars have caught up and are now greener than transit per passenger mile, especially the ferry, that's 3 times worse than cars, and also buses. So can we make sure we actually deal with a level playing field? Because I think people feel that they're being banged over the head with, you have to do this to be green, but the statistics are now showing otherwise, that cars have become as green or greener than transit. So can we have a restoration of honesty and transparency in this?
I think that was a statement and not a question, but I appreciate it. Let's go to the next one.
Hi, my name's Ami Atchison. I'm a question for the Congressman. Given Hillary Clinton's recent revelations that Obama ordered her to lie about the terrorist nature of the attacks on
Folks, I tell you what, let's do this. This is a transportation summit. I'm happy to answer any question with even a stretched nexus with transportation, but we're not going to talk about Benghazi. We're just not going to go there tonight. My office is available to you to talk about every other conspiracy that you can think of. But tonight's about transportation. Yeah, great.
Obama forced Hillary to lie, to cover up and values. What are you going to do to uphold?
I'm going to move to the next question. That's what I'm going to do.
The thinking that we heard tonight was reflective of the 1990s. In 2014, the single most important issue before us is climate change. The proposals that we're here talking about are getting money for a system that is based on single occupant driving, which generates large amounts of greenhouse gases. In fact, motor vehicles are the single largest source of GHGs in the Bay Area and in California. And so the question that I want to pose is, where's the future thinking? There are projects right now like the Karma rollout that could greatly increase ridership in existing lanes with no capital construction. There are things that can be done that require innovation, but what we've heard tonight, everybody has said it's not going to get funded, so we need to head off in a different direction. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. I do think, in fairness, there was quite a large public transit panel, and SMART is a good example of one of the projects that we hope will begin to offer a new paradigm. So we weren't completely lacking, but your point is well taken, and our mayor had something he wanted to say.
Thank you. I don't want to miss this opportunity. I want to thank the congressman for bringing in the people that work with issues of transportation. This is the burning issue in Petaluma. And what I would say is that we've talked a lot about how Highway 101 is impacted, but it isn't just Highway 101, because as a direct result of that, our local surface streets with a breakdown of Highway 101 are being inundated here in Petaluma. You could go at various times of the day and see that D Street on the east side of town, on the west side of town rather, is completely inundated with traffic, with people coming through the country roads of Novato to try to commute. If you go to Lakeville Highway and come up Adobe Road and go to Pengrove, you'll find that people are inundated with traffic there, and it's all directly related to the total breakdown of Highway 101. Mr. Kempton mentioned that there are 10 of the 14 most impacted federal roads in the state of California. I've got to think that the #1 most impacted road is Highway 101 and the corridor, and what that does to commerce, what it does to quality of life has been talked about a great deal here tonight. But as you deal with 101, bear in mind you're also dealing with the quality of life around the clock here in the city of Petaluma, because we're taking the brunt of the collapse of that 101 breakdown. And we can't begin to address local infrastructure needs until Highway 101 is completed and widened. And on a personal basis, having worked with a congressman while he was in the assembly, this congressional district is extremely fortunate to have Congressman Huffman as our representative. No matter how you feel about any of these sidebar issues, because what is happening in Washington, it is dysfunctional. But if anybody can find a way to reach across the aisle and get some functionality out of it, I think that it is our congressman. And so I want to thank you for coming here tonight. I want to thank you for bringing the regional leaders in here. And I know that they'll have Petaluma in mind as they look at trying to solve this regional transportation issue. Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Supervisor Rabbit wanted to make a comment.
I did, and thank you very much. I wanted to follow up on the comment that was made regarding the Narrows. You know, the Narrows is it will soon be the addition of the third lane, but it's as important to reconstruct the Narrows for safety purposes. We all have seen horrific accidents at the crossings that are unregulated, the driveways that are down there, the trees alongside a major freeway. In fact, that stretch of from Petaluma River Bridge down to Novato was really considered a highway, not necessarily a freeway. There were no interchanges. improvements. And the interchanges that were there were insufficient, not well designed, and I know our Caltrans friends can attest to that. So I think that really the first thing to do in order to get the freeway widened was to acquire the property so you could do it, to move the utilities out of the way so that you could do it, and also to create all the safety improvements, be it the horizontal curves, the vertical curves, the sight lines, and everything else to make sure that you can come back and actually get the lanes built. We could have not done that. We could have just waited. But you know what? We did it first because we had the money to do it, and we got value for that money. If we waited, we know that it would be millions of dollars more. So meanwhile, we took advantage of a great economy, thanks to the recession, to get great contract prices so that we can go out there and get that block of work done now and to make it cheaper in the long run and to be able to get there. So while we're all frustrated that there's not going to be a third lane right away, I think we'd be more frustrated waiting the 5 years it would take and the perhaps another $100 million to get all the work done at some future date. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important whether, you know, it may be a 1990s solution, but a Karma or a bus or a truck is still going to have to travel along what we hope will be a very safe, up-to-date road.
Good, no, thanks for that. So let's get a couple more public, yeah, please, here.
Hi, I'm Amy Willard from Marin. As you talked about in your prepared comments, Congressman Huffman, your survey shows that the majority of people do commute by car. And much of the traffic is going south through Marin. This morning I happened to drive up to Davis and it was stacked all the way back up to Vallejo on 37. It's not just a problem over here, and it's going, the traffic is getting clogged up in central Marin as well. Meanwhile, you have MTC and ABAG, which are mandating construction of high-density housing, most of which is not affordable housing, it's market rate, along 101 in central Marin. And basically, what's happening is that federal highway funds are being used as the carrot and the stick to force this agenda on the local jurisdictions. So you serve on the House Budget Committee. This is not just a local issue. This really is a federal issue. You have authority here, and so you know, on behalf of all of us here, I'd like to ask you what you can do to help break the linkage between the Highway Trust Fund, MTC, and the forced urbanization along 101, and remind you that you said so eloquently, the most important thing that I can do as your congressman is to keep things from getting worse.
Well, I appreciate the question, and I know that there's a lot of passion around the Planned Bay Area and this concept of transit-oriented development and density that has come into a very spirited debate, much more so in Marin County than Sonoma County. So if you Sonoma folks are scratching your head and wondering what all this is about, it's because we're having a very different discussion south of the county line.
But it affects them up here.
And so I just want to say, my hope is that we're going to move beyond some of the conflict and hyperventilation around a few specific projects, some of which were not good proposals. The Larkspur Ferry, the Larkspur Landing one is a great example of one that that planning commission intelligently, wisely pulled that back. It's not going to happen. And I don't think they could even get the water allocation to do it if they could get the planning commission approval. So there's all sorts of reasons why I think a lot of the things that are kind of creating a very pitched debate right now in Marin County, I think should be worked through if we can continue a respectful dialogue. And I don't think there is a role for me at the federal level to get involved with that. I think that is where I have a lot of deference and respect to my local partners in local government to make the call on local transportation and local housing decisions. That is their domain, not mine. So let's go to our next.
It's Andy right there, and then this woman.
Hello, Congressman Huffman. Andy Perry with the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I wanted to put a pitch out there for your support, and I think we already have it, but for the safety performance measures at the federal level for transportation dollar spending. 16% of trips are done by walking and biking nationwide, yet 25% of fatalities are coming, people walking and biking are victims at the level of 25%. So we really would like to see spending safety dollars commensurate with where they're needed. That was one thing. The second thing is to do your best to increase transportation alternative program funding, and I know we've talked about that in the past as well. And then finally, regarding Safe Routes to School funding, Supervisor Kinsey mentioned that. It's critical that we continue to have Safe Routes to School funding. The Safe Routes program has affected and benefited 16,000 schools nationwide, and it's a tiny fraction of the number of the schools that need it. When schools have that funding, more kids walk and bike. When more kids walk and bike, you have a much lower level of traffic that happens during those morning hours when people are trying to commute. So it's just a comment, and I want to thank you for your work on each of those
Well,
issues.
thank you for your work of promoting, one of those great alternatives that not only will help us with our congestion, but make us a little healthier too, by biking and walking. So it's good stuff, and right now it's really hard. This Congress is, the House at least, the House majority, as you well know, is going in the wrong direction on all these things. So we're gonna have our work cut out for us. We're gonna keep fighting to include those pieces of it.
I look forward to you being in the majority.
You bet. Yeah.
I work for the County of Sonoma. I take the bus. I'm SEIU. I'm on the North Bay Organizing Projects Transit Committee. We've been working with the city about getting people to the transit mall in order to catch these buses, because that's a real weakness. None of the bus systems in the county talk to each other, and they don't set up their routes and coordinate anything. So with the SMART train coming, there's no park and ride downtown, for instance. So how are people going to catch? There are park and rides further south, but there's nothing in Santa Rosa. And I guess we're going to have 2 depots here. So it's really important to plan on working with the cities, whichever city it is, to make sure that people can get downtown. Now, I take the bus all the time. I have no car, I got rid of it. So I'm experienced on all 3 systems, and I'm very aware of the problems. So I know that in my area in Bennett Valley, they cut the route to once every hour, SRT. All the commuters are now off the bus, and they're driving, because they were coming in with every hour, they can't get down to catch Sonoma County Transit or Golden Gate Transit. So I haven't heard that addressed, but somehow you all need to work with the cities to make sure that their bus routes get people to the SMART train and to Golden Gate Transit, and
Well,
either
thank
north
you.
or south.
I think we have a leader of our Sonoma County Transit Agency reaching for the microphone to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Those are very good points. I think the opportunity is going to present itself when we start to coordinate more with SMART and feeding into that service. And we are very soon going to be meeting with Barhawk and the SMART folks to work on those issues. Any other coordination issues, we're more than happy to work with you one-on-one by calling us at our offices. We have coordination meetings that we have monthly. More than happy to work with you on any specific details you have with transfer issues.
Or do you, if I could just follow up, do you have opportunities to just sit and hear from riders about their experience from time to time like that?
There's a transportation, transit coordinating committee meeting that meets monthly, I believe, through the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. And I'd be happy to meet with you and provide you with when they meet and their agendas, and that's a good forum to work on these coordination issues.
Terrific. Last question of the night. Oh yeah, Jake, go ahead.
Very quickly, if you want to see a couple, or at least one very good example of what's going to be happening in Sonoma County, take a look at East Cotati Avenue and the Cotati Multimodal Train Depot, where in fact being constructed right beside the SMART station is the Cotati Train Depot with associated bus places, so that in fact when SMART starts operating passenger trains at the end of 2016, there will be these linkages that are so beautifully done up in Portland when you go out to Beaverton and the train pulls in and the buses pull in at the same time. That's the sort of coordination that we're going to be working with from SMART with both of these transit authorities.
Terrific. Thanks. Yeah. It's a great goal.
Excuse me. I feel very honored to be the last question of the night.
I was fearful that I was sitting too far to the right of the audience. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to listen to some of the important issues, and for me it's important to hear about them. The transportation on the roads is very important, but I represent people who don't really use the roads very often. I'm Alan Brenner, I'm with the Earl Baum Center of the Blind, and we have our own set of issues, and it appears that it feels like we go from one crisis to the next, and then in between those we have a crisis. Right now we're facing several of them, including transportation. We've been hearing and learning that some of our paratransit needs are being changed and reduced. Some of the transportation needs are being reduced. And our population and other populations like ours have really few alternatives. And the main thing that I'm hoping is that in the big issue conversations, that we really don't forget that there are some people who have perhaps smaller impact conversation or needs that cannot be forgotten. And we really do need to take care of those who have no other alternatives. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very important note, I think, to wrap up on. So I just want to thank everyone. It's, to me, pretty unusual and pretty terrific that on a Monday night we would fill a room like this to take a deep dive on the transportation challenges that we're facing in Sonoma and Marin County. But it's very helpful for me. I would presume to say for my colleagues who are elected officials, it's very helpful for them too. To have this kind of discussion, to be updated on what's going on from the folks at the agencies that are at the tip of the spear, and to also have the very valuable feedback from all of you. Feedback that doesn't always agree with itself on every issue, but is nevertheless really important. I'm going to go back to work next week when I arrive in Washington after a few days of parades and things like that, waving with my left hand on the 4th of July. But just know that I understand how acute this challenge is, this problem is that's affecting our entire region here in the 101 corridor. And it is my highest transportation priority, certainly, to make sure that we are continuing to move these 101 corridor solutions forward. The narrows, making sure we do something to not only keep it on track, but hopefully accelerate the completion. The public transit pieces of this that are so important, SMART, and the rest of it. So I'm going to do everything I can. I thank you very much for the honor of representing you, and thanks for being here tonight.